right, Celtics fans, here I am a year later talking about another exciting NBA draft. Or so it would be if it were in fact exciting. So basically what happened is the Celtics, after years, and I don't know, I've been hearing about this for years, that the Celtics never get the number one pick. Whether they tank or they acquire a draft pick, they never get the number one pick. So this year, they finally get the number one pick. And this was after I questioned them not trading the Brooklyn draft pick before we knew it was number one at the trading deadline. And the reasoning was, well, they might have a pick that could be number one. It could be Markelle Fultz. So, all right, fine. And they'll keep the pick. And lo and behold, I look foolish because they get the number one pick. And now, yeah, we all know what happened. The Celtics traded the number one pick to the 76ers for the number 3 pick and some other random draft picks. Who cares? But I was actually going to do a rant as soon as that happened. I was really just livid about how they could just give away the number one pick after they wouldn't give it away for Jimmy Butler or Paul George when it wasn't even the number one pick, but they can give it away for the number 3 pick and a 2018 pick and a 2019 pick or whatever it is. So convoluted. They could do that, but they can't give it away for an all-star. But, before I started overreacting, I wanted to see what the Celtics would do. I wanted to see if, I didn't want to do a rant on Monday being like, how could the Celtics do this? And then on Friday they have Jimmy Butler, and then it's like, well, now I know why. I still don't know why, because the Celtics didn't do anything. They drafted number 3, they got nobody, they did nothing. Am I surprised? Not really. In the back of my mind I was like, well, maybe this will be the year. Maybe this will be the time the Celtics do something. Because, you know how it goes at this point. I've been doing these rants for a few years now. Every year the Celtics do a draft, and it's like, oh, they're going to trade into something, and they're going to get this player or that player. Maybe, they were going to get a player we haven't even heard about, And, of course, nothing. Again. But at least this time they drafted Jason Tatum, who's supposed to be a really good prospect. Not like last year when I said, what? About them drafting Jaylen Brown. Another player who's supposed to be good in a few years, we'll see. Same with almost all these picks. I mean, the Celtics have been getting pretty high draft picks for the past few years. I know Marcus Smart was a number 6 pick. He should still be something. They've drafted Terry Rozier. They've drafted James Young. I mean, these are guys that have been in the system long enough now where you can at least make an assessment on them. Jaylen Brown's only been on the team for a year, so you can't really say much about him yet. But, I don't know, maybe I'm just not being optimistic enough. I just feel like the Celtics have enough players that are going to maybe develop into stuff. They have that guy Zizic overseas. They have some other draft picks because they've taken so many of them. I keep hearing about all these assets the Celtics have, and yet all these assets just seem to go into more draft picks. So they keep drafting all these so-called great players. We'll see what happens. It's been a few years for some of them, and I feel like they're not really getting much return on that investment. But maybe Jason Tatum will be different. Maybe he will be a modern Paul Pierce or even a Jimmy Butler type. Maybe he will be a really good player for the Celtics going forward. Who knows? It's not impossible that they could still trade Jason Tatum or some combination of players to get a Paul George or whoever. Although right now I kind of hope they don't get Paul George based on everything that's been going on with him in Indiana and how he's going to go to Los Angeles. So I don't really see the point in doing that. On the bright side, at least Jimmy Butler didn't get traded. Oh, wait, he did? It must have been to a team that gave up a lot of stuff, right? Oh, it was the Timberwolves? So the Timberwolves got Jimmy Butler. This reminds me of the trade deadline when the Pelicans got DeMarcus Cousins. Now, I was kind of in the middle on whether I wanted DeMarcus Cousins. Obviously, I would have wanted him, but only for the right price. But, so instead you have the Timberwolves getting Jimmy Butler for the number 7 pick and some other players. The Celtics had the number 3 pick, which, if I'm not mistaken here, that's a better pick than 7. And they also had some talent to give away. Maybe a Jaylen Brown, maybe a Marcus Smart, because we all see how great he's become. And I don't know if they just didn't make that offer. I know they were pretty protective of that number 3 pick, for reasons I don't understand. They weren't protective of the number 1 pick. They gave that thing right away. But the number 3 pick, no, we can't give that away. We don't just give away high draft picks. Wait a minute, you just did. But, this is kind of the inconsistency that I'm used to. At least, I'm used to it from the Red Sox. With the Red Sox, they always hold on to their prospects no matter what, and then all of a sudden they'll just trade them all. But the Celtics, I don't know, their track record seems to never be to do any trades, really. And yet, they get number 1, and I'm like, okay, well, if they hold on to the number 1 pick, I don't blame them for holding on to the number 1 pick. But no, they trade it for number 3, and then they hold on to number 3 instead of trading it for Jimmy Butler. So I don't know. I don't know what the plan is here. I don't really care anymore. I'm kind of tired of being like, well, they're going to do something big tonight, and then every trading deadline or draft night, nothing happens, and then we go, well, the offer just wasn't there. It was there for the Timberwolves. It was there at the trade deadline for other teams to make deals. It's been there every other year. There are deals to be made. I don't know if they're waiting for LeBron James to suddenly knock on their door, but it just seems like they're waiting for this, perfect deal. And they're at the point now where they don't need more draft picks. In a few years, we have Jaylen Brown. We have, players that are supposed to be the next great player. We already have them. We don't need more players that are going to be the next great player. So I would have liked Markelle Fultz at least for that role, but I guess that wasn't meant to be. I can't wait to see him dominate with the Sixers for a few years. And then Jason Tatum might be the next guy. So fine, keep Jason Tatum, keep, Jaylen Brown, bring them along. But in the future, trade some of these picks, because you can't have, there's not spots for all these players. In addition to Isaiah Thomas and Horford and Crowder and everyone else, there's not room for every single draft pick that you're going to take. So trade some of them to get a better player, so we're not just sitting here waiting for players to develop when there are players already developed you could get. And one of them just went to the Timberwolves. And the Timberwolves, who, by the way, still have no chance in the West. I don't care that they have a few good players. They're not going to beat the Warriors. They're not going to beat the Spurs. They might beat the Rockets in a game. This move made them better, but at least the Timberwolves are trying to improve their team. I feel like the Celtics are just kind of like, well, we're not going to beat Cleveland, so let's just stop. And the Timberwolves and the Pelicans are more ambitious. And, I don't know. That's just my thought on the Celtics draft night. Kind of disappointing. I'm glad that they ended up taking a good player at number 3 and they didn't try some, pull a fast one, pick some random player at 3 or something, or trade down again. So I'm glad they took a player at 3 who could be a good player. I guess that's the point of getting a high draft pick. Too bad they didn't get the number 1 pick. Oh, wait, they did. And, yeah, so we will see you next season for the Celtics. If there's any news on Gordon Hayward or Blake Griffin or any of them, I might talk about that. But for now, this is the Celtics going forward. They added another young player. Let's see what happens.